As former U.S. President Donald Trump formally accepted his GOP presidential nomination, he was quick to take aim at the Biden administration after pitching a message of unity. Also addressed in a lengthy acceptance speech was his foreign policy vision that included North Korea's Kim Jong-un. South Korea's military has carried out loudspeaker broadcasts towards North Korea for 2 days in a row as the regime floated more trash-carrying balloons into the south yesterday. As heavy rain batters the country every summer during monsoon season, we take a look at how flood-prone areas are trying to prevent disasters through drainage systems. It's July 19th, 6 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin in the U.S., where former President Donald Trump has formally accepted the Republican Party's presidential nomination, delivering a speech for the first time since he survived a recent attack on his life, which lasted for over 90 minutes. Yoon-hee explains in detail.
I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump formally accepted the Republican Party's nomination to run for president at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Thursday evening local time. Wearing a bandage, Trump gave his first speech since the failed assassination attempt at Saturday's rally, where he was wounded by a bullet. He expressed that he was here only by the grace of Almighty God. During his speech, Trump promised to end every single international crisis that the current administration has created and restore the respect towards the United States. Warning that the world is teetering on the edge of World War III, he vowed to address and change the situation if elected. He also mentioned the raging wars in Europe and the Middle East and conflicts in Asia, including Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. Pointing out the importance of getting along with certain leaders, including those who possess significant nuclear capabilities, Donald Trump mentioned his positive relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Adding that he gets along with the North's leader, Trump suggested that Kim probably misses him. Trump placed emphasis on the economy and inflation and criticized the Biden administration's foreign policy, saying it was destroying the country. Referring to an invasion of migrants crossing the southern border, Trump revealed his plans to deport millions of undocumented immigrants. Trump has also proposed a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods in an effort to protect American industries. Donald Trump has been nominated for the third time in a row as the Republican presidential candidate. Trump ended his speech of more than an hour and a half by calling for unity.
And quite simply put, we will very quickly make America great again.
Whether he will be in a possible rerun against Joe Biden in November's election is uncertain, as the incumbent president is facing increasing pressure from within his party not to run. Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
In the meantime, reports say President Biden is taking calls to drop out of the race seriously, while he is resting and reflecting this weekend as he recuperates from COVID. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
U.S. President Joe Biden is taking calls to step down as a Democratic presidential candidate seriously, according to Reuters on Wednesday, citing sources familiar with the matter. It is known that multiple Democratic officials think that Biden's exit is a matter of time. The U.S. president had previously pushed back defiantly against calls to resign. However, he's now reportedly soul-searching after leading Democrats and lawmakers, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, have urged him to drop out. Leading Democrats have all expressed deep concerns directly to Biden in recent days that there is a great possibility of losing the White House and also the risk of the party being unable to win back the U.S. House of Representatives in the November 5th election. The change in position by the Democrats mostly comes from private polling results. Party leaders have been shocked by the negative response of the public, who've said that Democratic leaders are not being honest about Biden's mental health. In particular, a top White House source with direct knowledge of the matter says that former House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi has privately backed President Biden to step aside. Dan Mellison, a public policy professor at the Pennsylvania State University, says these calls for Biden to step down probably mean the Democratic leaders have been unable to convince him in private.
I think that's a big deal, especially for someone like Nancy Pelosi, to have her conversation come out in the news, even though it didn't come directly from her, as, you know, she maybe didn't get as far as she wanted with the president in that conversation, and now there's greater public pressure.
Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers plan to run election campaigns with Vice President Kamala Harris being lined up as an alternative. President Biden will have a public event in California next week if he recovers from COVID-19. Cha Young-kyung, Arirang News.
Here on the local front, South Korea's military has resumed its loudspeaker broadcasts this afternoon in response to North Korea's refloating of waste-carrying balloons across the border. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jung-soo has the details.
For the second day in a row, South Korea's military responded strongly to North Korea's latest balloon provocations. From around 4 p.m. on Friday, the military resumed the loudspeaker broadcasts over the border against the North. The broadcast includes commentaries on topics the North regime is especially sensitive about, including criticizing the ruling Kim family and promoting capitalism. The military said in a statement that Friday's decision came as it has observed the signs of the regime preparing to send more balloons over the border. It said the move blatantly violated the armistice agreement and called the act low and disgraceful, which came despite severe rain damage affecting residents in both Koreas. On Thursday night, the military continued broadcasting until early Friday morning as more balloons were spotted in northern Gyeonggi-do province late Thursday. Most carried paper trash, posing no threat, the military said. Pyongyang's balloon provocations follow a warning by the North Korean leader's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong earlier this week. She said South Korean leaflets were found in the north and vowed to retaliate. Civic groups, mainly consisting of North Korean defectors organizations, have been sending leaflets to the north since last year, as the South Korean government has not tried to prevent them from doing so.
We're approaching the issue of distributing leaflets in consideration of the Constitutional Court's decision ensuring freedom of expression. The government maintains close collaboration with relevant agencies and is committed to managing the situation effectively.
Some experts say Seoul may need to reevaluate the situation.
There's a need for the government to reevaluate the situation of condoning the distribution of leaflets by some North Korean defectors organizations to protect the lives and safety of the border residents and also to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula.
Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Heavy rain sweeping through central South Korea this week has caused widespread damage to homes and left many people in need. From Tuesday to 6 a.m. Friday, 455 houses were flooded in 11 cities and provinces nationwide, and around 2,000 residents had to be evacuated, with nearly half of them still unable to return home. In Jeollanam-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces, farmland equivalent to around 900 football fields were submerged. Paju in northern Gyeonggi-do province recorded the heaviest rainfall as of 5 a.m. Friday, with a total of 640 millimeters, while about 280 millimeters fell in northeastern Seoul. With the monsoon season likely to hit its peak this week, our correspondent An Sung-jin went out to see how flood-prone areas are looking to prevent damage.
Water sweeps through the streets. It soon fills every inch of the road, taking with it any object in its way, even people.
That's the road where a man died. The intersection heading down that way.
Water reached up to my shin while I was working, so most of the stores in the basement saw damage. I couldn't go home because the entire area was flooded.
This is a glimpse of what happened 2 years ago when heavy rain swept through, blocking off buildings and roads, causing chaos. Since then, people in the area fear that the same thing will happen again.
That manhole cover bounced off. We were so surprised. Then whenever it rains, it starts to stress me out. I still have a trauma from then.
Now the janitor brings out the water barrier to make sure that rain doesn't leak into restaurants and buildings. Some experts say the geographical layout is a factor as the area is low-lying. But one professor says that there is another crucial during times of heavy downpours.
As I said, if there is a problem with the drainage system in the city, and if it's left as it is, the same problems will occur every year. If leaves or trash gets clogged up, it needs to be cleaned out quickly by local district offices.
2 years ago, this area of Gangnam-gu district in capital Seoul saw massive damage from flash floods. Every year, flood-prone areas of the city face some degree of damage. How are cities trying to prevent this through an effective drainage system? There are many ways to keep the city's drainage system working and protect people's lives when flooding starts. For instance, local business owners like pharmacist Kim Young-nan would head out to the storm drain in front of her shop to make sure that it wasn't clogged.
If the storm drain is covered, the area becomes more flood-prone, so it needs a lot of attention.
Especially during the summer when it rains a lot, Kim says she puts extra effort to make sure.
It only takes a minute or two, and just a little bit of attention can reduce the damage. I started to help out to prevent further flooding.
Just like her, the district of Newongu cooperates with more than 2,000 different business owners to keep the storm drains clean by appointing them as protectors.
Previously, it would take 2 to 3 days for us to go around and check the drains. Now, with the help of these people, from receiving the report to fixing it can be done within a day. These people have volunteered to help take care of these storm drains.
They also added QR codes for each of the drains in the district to establish a more organized system to report any that aren't functioning properly. On average, around 20 reports come in daily. According to the National Disaster Management Research Institute, if the storm drain is covered even slightly more than half, the possibility of flooding doubles. Water can often spill out from manholes with the covers floating away. To prevent casualties, cities have implemented a preventive system. This metal plate, which can hold up to 400 kilograms, ensures that nobody falls through the manhole. These efforts are crucial, especially as South Korea this summer is looking to see one of its worst rainfalls yet, with 50% more precipitation compared to last year.
It's not necessarily that this year is the worst. Every year we may see stronger and stronger rain. If we look at the pattern for this year, the sea temperature around the peninsula is high, which constantly creates vapor, and there is an influx of low-pressure air from the west which clashes and creates rain clouds.
Meteorological predictions are difficult to make. No matter how many times we check weather apps, weather forecasts are rarely precise. What's important is keeping track of what's happening in real time and responding with proper measures. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In France, Ursula von der Leyen has secured the reins of the European Commission for a second term amid complicated geopolitics. Ian Jin has more.
The European Commission's first female president, Ursula von der Leyen, has been re-elected for a second term in a secret ballot vote at the European Parliament in Strasbourg on Thursday. She took a comfortable majority, winning 401 of the 707 votes that were cast from the current 719-member chamber. She said the next 5 years will define Europe's place in the world for the next 5 decades, and that it will decide whether Europe shapes its own future or lets it be shaped by events or by others.
We are working all together for a strong Europe. We're working on the topics of prosperity and competitiveness in our economy, social fairness because we have a social market economy. We're working on protecting people, so security and defense, but the most important is the overarching topic of strengthening our democracy. Our democracy is under attack from inside and from outside, and therefore it is crucial that the democratic forces stand together to defend our democracy.
Addressing Parliament before the election, von der Leyen vowed to create a true European defense union with flagship projects on air and cyber defense, and to continue to support Europe's green transition. She laid out a program focused on prosperity and security, shaped by the challenges of Russia's war in Ukraine, global economic competition, and climate change. Von der Leyen also promised tighter EU border controls and stronger police cooperation against crime. But it won't be until October at the earliest that a new EU Commission will be ready to propose new laws and change existing ones. In the coming weeks, von der Leyen will propose her team of commissioners coming from each of the 27 EU member states. National governments are expected to put forward their candidates by early August, which will begin the months of hearings and the questioning of nominees for conflicts of interest, as the full College of Commissioners then need to be endorsed by Parliament. 이은진, Arirang News.
In other news, with exports of ramyeon showing an upward trend in recent months, companies are looking for ways to keep this momentum going forward. Lee Soo-jin tells us how.
More than 2 million packs of ramyeon are produced at this factory each month, and more than 400,000 of them are shipped overseas. But these figures are unsurprising as exports of South Korea's ramyeon surged more than 30% to reach nearly $600 million in value during the first half of the year. At this ramen factory, you can see how in certain steps of the production process, how South Korean companies have begun to target directly overseas consumers to keep this momentum going. The Seoul metropolitan government has teamed up with this local company to release Seoul ramyeon both domestically and abroad in hopes that ramyeon becomes a food that the capital city becomes known for globally. To further cement its popularity, they have produced ramyeon that's not just delicious but also healthy by using non-fried noodles instead of the more common fried noodles. Non-fried ramyeon noodles, just like the ones that are fried, also take on the famous wavy form that allows them to be cooked almost instantly. But instead of frying the noodles after they're steamed at high temperatures, they're dried by hot air. Each batch is air-cooled inside these machines before being dropped to conveyor belts below where they're packaged to be shipped abroad. But in their global expansion efforts, companies are at a crossroads of whether they should pursue a localized or a standardized marketing strategy.
Whether to localize our products was our biggest concern, but we've recently decided to deliver the most authentic taste to our global consumers. And we've done so by using Korea's Cheongyang chili pepper in our soup.
Still others have decided to localize some of their products. Buldak ramyeon, which went viral on social media, has flavors only available overseas, such as the habanero lime buldak, which was developed solely for North and South American consumers.
I think localization is a good strategy, but companies should also promote traditional Korean flavors as well, perhaps through TikTok challenges.
In the future, according to the expert, the key to continuing the export growth will be figuring out various ways to effectively market ramyeon that remains authentic in its taste. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Even while serving in the South Korean military, BTS member Jimin dropped his new solo album on Friday. This is his first release since March last year when his debut solo album Face came out. MUSE is comprised of 7 love-themed songs, including the lead single Who. A pre-recorded performance of the song will be aired on NBC's The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon next Tuesday at 12:35 p.m. Korea time. Jimin was a guest on the show last March and performed the lead track Like Crazy from his solo debut album. In sports news, Korea's table tennis team is looking to turn the tide at the Paris Olympics by restoring its earlier glory. Choi Soo-hyung explains.
Table tennis was first included as an official event at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. Since then, South Korea has won a total of 18 Olympic medals, including 3 golds, ranking second overall in Olympic table tennis history. However, after a golden era in the late 1990s and early 2000s, South Korea's performance declined in the 2010s, falling behind countries including China, Japan, and Germany. Even in the 2016 Rio and 2020 Tokyo Olympics, South Korea didn't claim any medals. But after the Tokyo Olympics, their competitiveness sharply improved through a newly launched professional table tennis league here. In results, at the Hangzhou Asian Games last year, the team won a total of 8 medals. Chun Ji-hee, the oldest of the women's team and the Hangzhou Games women's doubles champion with her partner Shin Yu-bin, is competing in a 3rd Olympics in Paris. She became a South Korean citizen in 2011 after moving from China and is determined to give her everything in what will be her last Olympics.
After Tokyo, this Paris Olympics feels very close since it's being held just 3 years later. I will work hard to make up for the disappointment from Tokyo.
The team's morale is better than ever. Shin Yu-bin, who will compete in the women's team event and mixed doubles, has become a key player since her Olympic debut in Tokyo. She and her partner Im Jong-hun aim for gold in the mixed doubles.
My goal is to play without regrets, trusting in the hard training I've put effort into. I'll do my best to show my best performance, so please cheer for us.
In Paris, Chun, Shin, and Lee Eun-hye will compete in the women's events, and Im, Chang Woo-jin, and Cho Dae-sung will compete in the men's events, aiming to win at least 3 medals. New hope is being kindled, starting from the 27th. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
In most inland areas, the monsoon rain has subsided and a heat wave has appeared. However, from tomorrow, up to 150 millimeters of water bomb rain is predicted to hit the country. Up to 50 millimeters per hour is expected in the Seoul metropolitan area and Chungcheongdo provinces, and up to 30 millimeters per hour in southern inland areas. Up to 100 millimeters is predicted in Seoul. With a lot of rain recently, the ground has become very weak. Currently, the landslide crisis warning is at alert level in the Jeollado provinces and Gyeongsangbuk-do province. Please pay attention to any landslide damage. The morning will start off in the mid-20s tomorrow in most areas. Highs will move up to 27 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gyeongju and Jeju, 33 degrees. Rain will continue next week. That's for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service for viewers worldwide. Please visit our website www.arirang.com to provide your honest opinions. Participants will be entered into a draw for a chance to win prizes. Overseas TV viewer survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
하나님은 다 받아주신다. 바다니야 와 우리 모두가 깨어나 살다 다시 돌아가 잠드는
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Han-Dan in Seoul. COSPAR 2024, a global space conference often referred to as the Space Olympics, is being held in Korea's southern port city of Busan. This year's event, hosted by Korea for the first time, brought together around 3,000 space scientists and industry officials from some 60 nations, including representatives from NASA, Japan's National Space Agency, and the European Space Agency. Under the tagline, Team Spirit in Space, participants put their heads together to advance global space research and build international partnerships to achieve greater leaps into space. In this edition of Within the Frame, we have the honor of speaking with Pascal Ehrenfreund, the president of the Committee on Space Research, to discuss the future of space exploration. Thank you so much for joining us.
I thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
All right, so the 45th Scientific Assembly of the Committee on Space Research, that's the full name, is being held in Busan. For our viewers who may not be familiar with it, tell us more about the biennial Global Space Conference.
Well, the Committee on Space Research was founded in 1958, and it represents a global network of about 13,000 space scientists. And they are all dedicated to drive innovation and also collaboration across all space science disciplines. So that would include Earth and atmospheric science, planetary science, astrophysics, and life sciences. And COSPAR is really specialized in advancing science through space-based research, so space missions, space probes, space observations. And it organizes a scientific assembly every 2 years in a different country. And these assemblies bring together, as you already said, about 2,000 to 3,000 scientists from around the world to present the latest discoveries in their fields. And the assembly also features high-level meetings. You mentioned space agency leaders. We have also industry panels. We have interdisciplinary lectures, also in order to teach scientists about other fields. We had very engaging public talks, for South Korean public. And we have an exhibition which is showcasing major space agencies and industry. So in general, it provides really ample opportunities for these 3,000 scientists and also engineers for networking, knowledge exchange, and fostering global partnerships, and of course also friendships.
Of course. And it seems the COSPAR Assembly's significance is increasing amid a heated global space race and rapidly changing space landscape. It plays a crucial role in bringing the world together to promote innovation and research and also facilitate global collaboration, which now seems more important than ever before. And this year, South Korea had the privilege to host the event in Busan. How was Korea selected as the host for this year, and what significance does it hold?
Well, the decision on where to hold a COSPAR assembly is made many years in advance because it's an extensive preparation which is required for such a large conference. So our local organizing committee and the COSPAR community have worked, tirelessly over 2 years to ensure the success of this event in Busan. And this year's assembly, as you already said, is very, very successful. And we have nearly 3,000 participants from more than 60 countries. And the attendees engage with scientists. They present over 3,000 talks and posters and participate in 150 scientific events. So in general, I also want to express that COSPAR is really very happy and thrilled to host its scientific assembly here in Busan with the team, with the team spirit in space research. And as you said before, these are exciting times also for the Republic of Korea, which has very ambitious plans to explore the moon and Mars in the coming decades, among many other space ventures. So we also congratulate the newly established Korea Aerospace Administration, KASA. And Korea's space strategy clearly aims to start a new era and create a really robust space ecosystem, involve the private sector, expand investments, and establish top-level research and industrial environments. And that makes it very exciting also to be here, and all the 3,000 participants are somehow a part of that.
As you just mentioned, the assembly certainly grabbed a lot of media attention here in Korea as it marked the global debut of Korea's newly launched space agency, KASA, which we'll talk about as we move on. But before that, Dr. Aaron Freund, I want to talk about new space. The starting line may vary among countries, but a shift toward the private sector-led commercial space exploration has become the dominant global trend, giving rise to the name New Space. What does this mean for the global space industry?
Well, the space sector is developing at an accelerating pace with the involvement of numerous stakeholders. So we have really many different stakeholders, commercial actors, established industries, but also academia. We have a lot of startups, of course. And these commercial space actors, in collaboration with public partners, that's an important sentence, are somehow revolutionizing the industry, being more cost-effective, having reusable launch vehicles, and also really ambitious missions. And to strengthen companies in the commercial space market, I think both dedicated funding programs and also non-monetary support, such as consistent and predictable national regulatory frameworks, are really required. So one effective tool to foster commercialization is the establishment of public-private partnerships. That's also foreseen in the Korean space strategy, and that helps to realize projects serving both the public and commercial interests. But I think it's important to say that currently companies in the new space sectors are partners, and they still depend a lot on public funding. So it's some kind of a transition period, and it is equally important for governments to remain engaged in the governance of space activities. So you have to find a good balance, yeah? And I think the goal of everybody, also worldwide, is to balance policy, commercial, and also scientific interests in the new space era.
I think you highlighted an important point that we're now at a transitional phase, but the government, it's important for all the governments to still stay engaged. But Dr. Aaron Freund, there are also concerns about the new space era. NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy, speaking in Busan, said that commercial space exploration is rapidly expanding, but there aren't enough regulations. What are your thoughts?
Well, in the area of the current space sector, it is crucial to balance the interests of various stakeholders, and that includes governments, commercial actors, also the scientific community. I've always to speak for the scientific community, being a part of it. And for instance, particularly in the space exploration and also, resource activities. So for instance, mining on a solar system body. So we have the United Nations and committees like the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. I think that's quite known to everybody, UN COPUS. And they are really deliberating governance and regulatory matters concerning sustainability of space activities beyond Earth's orbit. And we have a lot of countries which are involved in that. More than 100 countries are here on one table to discuss the future. And for example, in June 2024, UN COPUS agreed to establish an action team on lunar consultations. So states have the obligation under the Outer Space Treaty to authorize and supervise the space activities of private actors under their jurisdictions. And how states implement their rights and obligations under international space law treaties is more or less their own prerogative. So there should be continued discussion at this governance level to further cooperation and coordination of space activities. But we are living in a very, very exciting time. There have never been so many missions which are currently active and planned in the future, which are exploring our solar system. And it's a wonderful time, and we have to find a solution with good regulations, which are not too restrictive, and we all can agree upon.
I think you've already briefly touched upon this, but you said that there are existing agreements and treaties, but how can we further strengthen a global regulatory framework to prevent conflicts and promote cooperation as more nations and private entities as well engage in outer space exploration?
Yeah, so it is really important that the deliberations at a global governance level continue. And that goes very often also through the United Nations. So you have to continue to foster sustainability, consistency, transparency, and interoperability, among states and space actors. It's not an easy process, but everybody knows, and we discussed it a lot worldwide, that we need enhanced coordination and cooperation in promoting the safety of space operations in Earth's orbit, and we need a common understanding how we carry out lunar activities precisely, to avoid conflicts, misunderstanding, and mishaps when different nations and actors will carry out missions to the moon in the near future. So the process I mentioned earlier, the establishment of consultation teams called ATLAC under the United Nations, has the objective to address such matters. So it's a matter of governance more than enacting new regulations. And it's, I totally agree, it's sometimes difficult to reach consensus among states, but this global regulatory framework is in the mind of everybody, and there are a lot of attempts, to find good solutions, nationally, internationally, but also under the United Nations.
Meanwhile, Korea continues to strive in its space endeavors. It successfully completed the third launch of its homegrown rocket, Nuri, positioning itself as the 7th country capable of independently sending a commercial satellite into space. We still have a long way to go to catch up with major space powers, but how do you assess the current level of Korea's space technology?
Well, as you mentioned, in your question, South Korea is already quite accomplished in space technology and missions. You have a launcher, a successful lunar orbiter project, you have satellite technology, just to name a few. And in my previous positions, in the space sector, I have been involved in many international cooperations with Korea. Korea has also an educated science and engineering workforce and really fosters international cooperation in the space sector already since quite some time. So the newly founded Space Agency CASA and also the new space strategy really discuss important goals for the next decade, and one of them is to be the 5th space nation in 2020, I think in 2045, and planned is a lander to the moon in 2032 and a journey to Mars by 2045. So these are amazing goals, and it is clear that the Korean space sector is already advanced.
Korea may be a latecomer, but it has ambitious goals, as you mentioned at the top, and the Yoon administration is pumping over $70 billion, or perhaps even more than that, to support scientists and companies. Plant a Korean flag on Mars by 2045, as you mentioned, and to land a lunar probe by 2032. Some very exciting, it'll be very exciting, as you said, to watch from here on out. The Korea Aerospace Administration, or CASA, was launched earlier this year as Korea looks to open up a new chapter in space exploration. What do you consider the primary roles of a government space agency, and what strategies would you recommend for CASA?
Well, I think that the new space strategy of CASA, which was also discussed here at the COSPAR Scientific Assembly, positions, South Korea very well for the future. So, in particular, we have mentioned already many things, but CASA aims to foster more than 2,000 space-related companies in the future, and also to create more than 500,000 new jobs in the field. So, it's not really for me to give an advice, but the usual ingredients to advance, the national space sector are, it is important to build an effective space ecosystem with alliances between government, space industry, and academia to advance space technologies. And for my personal impression, being quite often here in South Korea, this works much, much better than in other countries where there is much more competition and disagreements. So these alliances are, I think, rather easy and more easy to form here in South Korea. The other thing is to invest in startup companies, and that's also in the space strategy, and that's what most of the countries which want to advance their space sector are doing. So these startup companies have to develop new business models for space technologies and service. They have to be innovative, they have to be cutting edge, and they need support. And also, what is important, but which is also in the strategy, is strengthen the space workforce and educate, the next space generation so that they are able, to develop new technologies. And we have a problem all over the world with the STEM workforce, in science, technology, and engineering. So it is very important, and I think South Korea is very lucky having actually a very strong base in science and engineering. So has probably less troubles to develop that than other space nations. And last but not least, we already mentioned to foster international, cooperations in the space sector. That's a really, really important thing, and also mentioned in the space strategy. So I think there is a very good basis, and now it's about implementation.
So you mentioned that Korea needs to space a healthy space ecosystem among the government, the companies, as well as the academia. We also need to invest in startups. You also mentioned a bit about education and global partnerships. But what do you think are some of Korea's biggest challenges in getting there, in achieving those goals?
Yeah, well, it is important to foster entrepreneurship and to provide funding and education for young entrepreneurs. And what is always a challenge in many countries is risk aversion. Yeah, so there needs to be space now in another sense, space to innovate, but also to fail, and to deliver new concepts and space technologies. Yeah, we have seen that with many of the new space companies in other countries, there have been quite some failures, but this is necessary in order to succeed at the end when you develop new technologies. So you have to make room for that. I'm coming from Europe, and I have to say that risk aversion is very, very high. And that's why we do not have so many startups in Europe in the space sector. And we have really also to do our task and improve it. And this is an important factor. And as we discussed before, regulation should balance, the interests of different stakeholders involved in space missions. Space sustainability is since a few years an important topic. We want to develop the space sector responsible and not destroy or contaminate objects in our solar system. And that requires a dialogue among all the stakeholders involved in space missions and also international agreements. And so all these aspects are challenges, and it requires a good space ecosystem in the country. That's now we are back at what we discussed in the previous question.
And our final point of discussion today, Dr. Erin Freund, amid a heated global race for lunar exploration, some are stepping ahead, advancing from lunar probe to commercial lunar services. What are your prospects for this, and what is COSPAR's role in the world's push for the moon?
Yeah, so it's correct. There are currently over 150 lunar and cislunar space missions planned in the next decade. But we have also seen how difficult it is to realize them. In the recent months, 6 missions have been launched to the moon. India and Japan became the 4th and 5th nation, respectively, to achieve successful soft landing alongside a private mission. So China has just recently returned the first ever samples from the lunar far side. So how fast a cislunar economy actually develops is not known. Nobody can make these predictions. Yeah? And we have another Artemis program. We have the International Lunar Research Station planned by China and partners. So they envisage infrastructure, humans on the moon in the next decade. That's all very exciting. And for a while, space agency and commercial partners will go hand in hand, yeah, and work together. COSPAR's role is that space research is very dynamic and is an integral component for future lunar programs. We have many lunar experts among the associates of COSPAR. And if you want to successfully land and operate on the surface on the moon and do that responsible, then you really need to consider new scientific data and findings. And the COSPAR community provides this knowledge transfer and supports also international partnerships. So COSPAR also supports the United Nations concerning responsible lunar space exploration. So there are many different points.
Exciting times indeed. Our discussion concludes here, but we look forward to seeing the continued advancements and innovations that COSPAR will undoubtedly help bring to the world of space science. Thank you so much, Dr. Erin Freund, for making time for us and sharing your invaluable insights.
Kamsahamnida.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time next week for more. Have a great weekend.
There is no greater blessing than to have good health as you grow old. Even though my mom is over 70, she is peppy and full of energy. One day, our family started practicing taekwondo, and it turned out to be a special blessing for us. Taekwondo family, return to happiness.
옛날에는 택시부터 시작해가지고 버스